Hi, everyone. Welcome to our CASI Charter Chats. As a reminder, please keep yourself muted. You may put questions into the chat and there will be Q&A throughout the session and at the end. This session is being recorded. However, the recording will only take place in the main room. The breakout rooms are not recorded. Today we'll be covering legislative updates, several hot topics related to program and fiscal oversight, we will also be offering a regional breakout room. So I'd like to introduce the people who will be here today. I'm Dr. Michelle Johnson. I'm the Associate Director of the Santa Clara County Office of Education. And the rest of our SCCOE team is actually in an all-day training for our county office. So unfortunately, you only get me. But we also have our CCAP partners. Next slide, please. And Tom Hutton is here. He's the Executive Director. Say hi, Tom.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us again.
And so it's going, and then we have our friends from CDE as well. So let's move on to the next slide. And speaking of our friends from the CDE, we've been getting lots of questions at CASI, specifically regarding universal pre-kindergarten and transitional kindergarten. Specifically, what are the requirements for charter schools and universal pre-transitional kindergarten? So we're going to actually turn this question over to the CDE and their early education division. And presenting will be Stacy and Shanna from the UPK Implementation and Support Office. So Stacy and Shanna, take it away.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me okay? We're good? Okay, so good morning and thanks for having us here today. I wanted to start off by sharing our UPK mailbox, and Shanna's going to drop that in the chat for everyone, just in case there's additional questions that come up after the presentation or in the future. If you have questions, you can always email me at upk@cde.ca.gov, and Shanna's going to put that in the chat for you guys. So I noticed that the four questions here that are listed are some new FAQs on our webpage. So I'm going to address the questions and then read the responses. These can all be found on our UPK FAQ page on the CDE website as well. So the first is, do charters have to offer TK, transitional kindergarten? And the response is no, schools do not have to offer transitional kindergarten. The California Department of Education's position was previously expressed differently on our webpage as well, but that has changed. What is the ratio for transitional kindergarten during recess and lunchtime? The statute requires that starting July 1st of 2022, a school district or charter school shall maintain an average ratio of at least one adult, which may be the teacher, for every 12 pupils during instructional time, which for transitional kindergarten students at a school district includes recess if the students are engaged in educational activities required of them, and they're under the immediate control and supervision of a certificated employee. And that is from California Education Code section 46115. The law is silent with respect to whether the ratio must be maintained during lunch and recess. That is not being counted towards instructional time. If you have any questions or additional questions about instructional minutes, instructional time, or ratios, for ratios, you're going to want to email the School Fiscal Services Division. And their email, I'll also have Shanna drop this one in the chat for you too, is PACE, P-A-C-E, at cde.ca.gov. Again, that's PACE, P-A-C-E, at cde.ca.gov. And that would be the School Fiscal Services Division if you have questions around ratios. If you have any questions about instructional minutes, you would want to send your email to attendanceaccounting@cde.ca.gov. I know that question kind of was a mix of ratio and instructional minutes. Okay, The next question was, can a charter school offer transitional kindergarten as part of an independent study program? The answer is yes. However, the independent study program that the local educational agency is providing would have to meet the requirements of independent study in order to be eligible for funding. And the question quotes Article 5.5 of Chapter 5 of Part 28 of the California Education Code, commencing with Education Code Section 51745. And the last question, do charter schools not offering TK have to return their UPK or Universal Pre-Kindergarten Planning and Implementation funds allocated pursuant to Education Code Section 8281.5? If charter schools are not offering transitional kindergarten and are not creating plans for UPK implementation, then they are required to return the UPK planning and implementation funding. If that's something that your charter school would like to do, please send an email to upkplanninggrant@cde.ca.gov to advise us of this intent. We will follow up with an email of the next steps of the process to return the UPK funds. All right, that was it, Michelle. Let me know if there's any questions.
So at this moment, okay, so the question is, if charter schools are not offering transitional kindergarten and are not creating plans for UPK implementation, oh, it says use the above email. Never mind. That wasn't a question. That was a statement.
No problem.
So all of this information is on your website, right?
It's on our FAQ page, and I can put that link in the chat as well.
And we are also including your link on
I put the
our
link in the
resource
chat.
page. So
Perfect.
all of this information will be available to everyone. So thank you so very much. Are there any questions for our friends on UPK or UTK? Because I'm not seeing anything from anyone.
And like I said, if somebody thinks of a question later on, upk@cde.ca.gov is the quickest way to get a hold of us. We'll be able to respond within a few days.
Great. So thank you so very much. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.
All right, next slide, please. So in the last little while, the Advisory Commission on Charter Schools to the State Board of Education held their meeting. The ACCS in its August 11th meeting considered 2 additional appeals of denials of charter petitions under the abuse of discretion standard under Assembly Bill AB 1505 that we discussed in the July charter chat. As a reminder, the role of the ACCS is not to determine whether an abuse of discretion occurred, but to recommend to the State Board of Education whether there is sufficient evidence to hear the appeal or to summarily deny review of the appeal based on the documentary record. So the first case was Caliber High School. The Caliber High School charter petition was denied by Vallejo City Unified School District and the Solano County Board of Education. The California Department of Education, or CDE, recommended that the ACCS issue a recommendation to the State Board to summarily deny the CHS appeal. ACCS first voted down a motion to recommend that the State Board hear the appeal, and then they voted to recommend that the State Board summarily deny the appeal. The second case is for Mayacamas Charter Middle School. The Mayacamas Charter Middle School charter petition was denied by Napa Valley Unified School District and the Napa County Board of Education. The CDE recommended that to the ACCS to issue a recommendation to the State Board to hear the Mayacamas Charter Middle School appeal. This recommendation was based on the CDE's review of Mayacamas's appeal and the documentary record, which set out sufficient evidence to hear the appeal. The ACCS voted to recommend the CDE staff recommendation. The next State Board of Education meeting at which these recommendations will be considered will be held on September 14th and 15th. So hopefully we'll see you there. Next slide, please. Current legislative updates. For those of you who are not familiar with the legislative process, bills go through a 2-year legislative process. This is the last year for a bill to complete this process, and the last day for each house to pass bills is August 31st, which is today. So AB 2484 that we have been following has been placed in suspense or held under submission, which essentially means that it's dead. SB 1343 failed to pass the Assembly's floor, meaning third time it was read and refused passage, meaning that it is also dead. AB 2774 was amended and is still awaiting its vote, so it's still technically in process right now. We'll be hearing information hopefully about it today. Should these bills pass, it will then go to the governor's desk where he will need to take action by September 30th. There is also another update. On June 30th, 2022, the governor signed SB 189. It was chapter 44 in statutes of 2022, which added government code section 11133, which allows state bodies covered by the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, or what we also known as the Brown Act, to hold public meetings covered by the act via web or audio teleconferencing, and that will continue on through June 30th of 2023. So for all of your charter schools that are looking to continue, or even your own boards to continue doing teleconferencing instead of in person, this will now allow that to occur until June 30th. Next slide, please. So we're going to move on to the hot topics, and I'm going to turn the time over to Tom to talk about Williams on the program side. Next slide.
Yes, and for those of you, not everybody in the authorizing shop is the one going around doing Williams visits, but we hear from some of our county folks and others that's been taking up a lot of their time lately. I think Michelle is one of those happy people. But we have had a number of questions coming in about Williams visits and other things. So let me just kind of read them off, and some of and they're easy responses for the most part. The first one was just kind of, are charter schools required to use state adopted curriculum? And just as a refresher, no, the rule for charters is if the curriculum is in their authorized charter, it addresses state standards, but doesn't have to adhere to, the particular state adopted textbook curriculum, but it does reflect state standards, and it is approved by the charter school's own governing board. That's the process for getting your properly adopted curriculum in a charter school. That also, by the way, applies to online curriculum. That was another question that came in. Again, the two steps are, is it in your charter, and did your governing board approve it? And then there was also a question about displaying the UCP, the Uniform Complaint Procedures, in the way that other schools do. And actually, charter schools are not subject to the monitoring, complaint, and posting requirements of Williams complaints through the UCP, but they have the option of opting into that. And in that case, they do follow it, but it's an option. It's an opt-in for the charters.
Thanks, Tom. All right, so another question came. We've got questions on independent study. So Governor Newsom signed the Education Omnibus Trailer Bill, which is AB 181, on June 30th, which went into effect immediately. And it includes significant changes to the independent study requirements. These changes directly impact board policies and independent study agreements between families and the LEAs, or the local education agencies, which must be legally compliant for the LEA to collect attendance apportionments for students participating in independent study. While charter schools are not required to offer independent study, if they do or did, they must now comply with the changes that are enacted in AB 181, and their independent study policy must be updated to match the new requirements. Some of these requirements are: students with independent needs or exceptional needs may now participate in independent study, and the IEP team may not decline a student's request for independent study based on the student's inability to work independently, or the need for adult support, or the need for special education or related services. Signatures on the independent study agreement are no longer required from all persons who have direct responsibility for providing the assistance to the pupil. However, in addition to the student, the parent, the guardian or caregiver, if the student is less than 18, and the certificated employee supervising the independent study, agreements now must also be signed by the certificated employee designated as having responsibility for the special education programming of the pupil. The tiered re-engagement strategies have also been modified. Now strategies are triggered if any of the following occur. The student fails to generate attendance for more than 10% of the required instructional time over 4 continuous weeks. The student does not participate in synchronous instructional offerings for more than 50% of the scheduled time in a month, or the student is in violation of the written agreement. All of that information, I know I gave you a lot of it really fast, is actually going to be on our resource document. And you can also review the CDE website for more information on the impacts of 181. So Tom, I'm going to turn renewals over to you.
Okay, well, we were all very grateful, of course, for the 2-year hiatus on renewals while we tried to reemerge from COVID, but that time is elapsing, and on July 1st, 2023, they start up again, and that will come upon us much sooner than we think. So it's a good time to be thinking about your renewal protocols, your gathering of the data, if you're doing annual reports, getting those out and reviewed, and probably meeting with charter schools to talk through the procedure, particularly because, you know, it's a unique situation where we've had a hiatus, where the dashboard has been silent for a couple of years, where there's some conversations to be had about using verified data for the growth aspects of the renewal criteria, and talking through those things may take a little while. So just be thinking renewal, even though it's tempting to think, oh, 2-year hiatus, I don't have to think about that for a little while yet. The time is going to be upon us quickly, and there's some extra steps this time around. And I guess the other thing, just the reminder too, is, you know, a lot has changed for the schools in the course of this whole great upending of the world. And it may be that the result of that has been some things that they would like to have in the way of material changes. And in that will necessitate, you know, that be reflected in the renewal petition. So be on the lookout for that and be having those conversations with your schools. If things have changed and they want that in the renewal petition, that's something that they need to be thinking about.
So I'm seeing a couple of questions about renewals already in the chat. Well, first one, for our renewal charters, since the California Schools dashboard won't be released, will we be able to determine on our own performance categories? Can our charters come to us prior to the dashboard release for their renewal? Great question. I will say that AB 1505 does say that it has to be based on the most recent data, and we'll also be looking for the information from the CDE, and we're not sure whether or not we're going to be getting information about the high, middle, and low. So that's going to be a lot of good questions for July 1st, because that's when things should be rolling around. But we'll be seeing and waiting and watching. Next question. We've heard that there are some authorizers considering a policy that they will not accept any renewals until after the 2023 dashboard. Is anyone considering that? Is that legal? Good question. We'll get back to you on that one.
Yeah, that's when we'll have to do a huddle and next charter chat.
Next question. Will the extra steps for renewal process be included in the resource document? All of this information that we're sharing with you goes into the resource document.
And again, if you have follow-up questions based on what you see there, sometimes the resource documents are a little bullety, you know, just here's the key highlights, or here's the links to the statutory provisions. If you have questions, you know where to reach Cassie, because the information is there. And And sometimes the information that we use to populate these charter chats are not only from the questions that come up in our breakout rooms here, but the questions that come up along the way because people email us.
The next question was, are any other COEs seeing a landslide, meaning lots of renewals, so that you can touch base off seeing a landslide? So I will say that I was in a meeting yesterday and heard that there are new petitions coming through at other places, and appeals are going on. And I know that for our office, out of our 22 schools for next year, we will have 7 of them that will be up for renewal, with the possibility of at least 3 more that might come on appeal. So who knows how this landslide might be occurring. So yeah, we're looking at a lot.
And there's a couple of comments by people saying, you know, they're getting a lot at once, and maybe we could have a discussion about that. I mean, that might be something when you get into your breakout rooms today, if you're looking for Jamboard ideas to be putting on the table, handling a crush might be one of the things to put on there, and we can do some follow-up on that on that particular challenge for those who are facing it.
All right, next slide, please. So we have the fiscal oversight, and unfortunately, all of our fiscal people aren't here. So you get Tom and me, but
Oh,
I'm
boy.
going to have Tom share the information on unaudited actuals.
Yeah, so on unaudited actuals should be closing out the previous year's accounts and getting ready to submit for the auditing process. And just by way of review, those go to the authorizers by September 15th. The authorizers review those and then turn around and submit them to their county offices of education, who in turn then get them to CDE by October 15th. The link has the link there gets to sort of where this is all mapped out. One quick little kind of front end distinction is that the charter schools either use the standard account code structure, SACS, or they use the alternative form. So they've got to be using one or the other, and then pursue it through that route. But basically the timeline is coming up upon us soon.
All right. So next slide, please.
All right. Well, you always hear Cassie and CCAP and everybody else beg and plead for evaluations and surveys and tell us what's going on and tell us how we can help and tell us. And here's the challenge. The surveys, if they take like 15 minutes, people start them and don't finish them, or they don't get to them. And I was talking with Nate Fairchild up in Shasta, and he says, when he does a survey, he says, right on the spot, let's do it right now. And that's how you get them done. So we've gotten the hint from everybody about surveys, and we said we're going to make them very short. So here's a very short one, and we would love if you could just take a few minutes right now to do it. Here's what it is. There's, you know, if you're familiar with NACSA, they have some essential practices that they advise nationally, and we've sort of translated them into California, and we have a 10 quick little checklist. Yes, I do it. No, I don't do it. And don't panic if you don't do them all. That's okay. But it just helps us get the temperature check. And it's a good self-assessment tool and a self-awareness tool. And then we also asked about, you know, CCAP has these tools, and we have to report to our world, you know, whether people, have they used it? Have they adopted it? Have they just cross-referenced it with their own? So it's very short. I'm going to share screen, and I'm going to set the timer and take a few minutes. If you saw our CCAP alert, we called it the 2-minute assessment, but Michelle tells me it took her 4. So we'll take a few minutes, and I'll just share the screen on it as well. If you can see that, and if you can click on the link in the slide. Whoop, did I remove oh, it's in the chat. Okay, in the chat. And just go through this. It's okay if we do ask that you tell us who you are. We're not going to divulge that information to anybody else, but that lets us control. For example, if we're getting 3 from one authorizing shop, we don't count that authorizer 3 times. So if you could just take a minute, to look at this. The information is just the who we are side. And then here's that little checklist. If you see, it's like, and these are, again, NACSA best practices. We've kind of translated them into California. And we're interested also in whether, if you've started doing this recently, if you could check that middle box. If it's a long time thing you've done, just click the first one and never mind. And if you don't do it, hey, that's okay. We're just getting a temperature check because, some of these are pretty low hanging fruit, but if you've never done them, Cassie can help kind of make resources available so that they are low hanging fruit to people who have not done them and are not familiar with them. So let me, I even was going to set my little timer on so I could not eat up too much time. And if there's questions about any of this, pipe up or put it in the chat and I can clarify since we're looking at it together.
Can I ask for clarification on the external expert question?
Yes, ma'am.
So what do you mean by external person?
That's a great question. So NACSA's recommendation, and again, not everybody has to do all these things, but it's a good temperature check. Their recommendation is that if you have in-house people in your agency, that you also consider using somebody from outside the agency who, and there's lots of people who do this very inexpensively, where they'll be part of the review team and they have a lot of experience reviewing petitions in a lot of different contexts. And that augments, particularly if you're an authorizer who's never had to review one of these before, because you haven't had a petition in a few years and there's been turnover, or it's your first one, getting people who have been through this process, or if there's a particular area of expertise, like, wow, our fiscal people know how to oversee the fiscal management of operating schools, but we've never had anybody have to really pick apart the budget of a proposed startup. Can we find somebody on the outside who could bring that piece? We'll provide the rest, but we just need one person to sort of augment our team. So that's something NACSA recommends you consider.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then going down at the very bottom is, again, the questions about some of the CCAP tools. And there's a range of things like, hey, we're all in or never heard of it. And that's all fair, just on those four things. Some of them, like the annual report toolkit, you'll recall we did, for those of you who participated, we did a training for it here. For those who are at the CCAP conference, we did the petition toolkit. The others are not as well known, and that's okay, but we just wanted to sort of take stock as we look at, and this one is kind of an overlapping CCAP. What do we need to do? And then if there's utility of this for Cassie, then we have the Cassie conversation as well.
All right, Tom, there's your 4 minutes.
All right. I'm glad you started the timer. I started mine late. Okay, let's move on. How do I unshare? Here we go. And if there's anything you have to, somebody did say, who was filling this out said, yeah, it didn't take me 2 minutes because I had to go see how recently we started doing that. So I would just beg and plead abjectly that if you weren't able to finish it in the 4 minutes, please finish it up for us. and again, in the future, we will take your message to heart that short is good when it comes to surveys.
All right, next slide, please. Oh, this is the old version. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that right now. We're going to do the breakout rooms. So we're going to jump into our breakout rooms, and we have some helpers that are going to be helping us. In the northern region, Nate is going to be the facilitator. In the central region, Jeff is going to be the facilitator. And in the southern region, Kathy is going to be our facilitator. It's the same process. Please jump onto the Jamboard. Figure out, put in your burning topics or talk about what we just currently talked about, ask questions, and we'll see what we can do. And we'll see you in about 20 minutes. It is good to see you. I will say that we had a very lively discussion over in the northern room. I I see a few things over in Central, and I don't see anything on the Southern region. Was there any major discussion over in the
There
Southern?
was. I apologize. I lost the link to the chat box and I couldn't post them, but we did have some great discussion around renewals, the middle tier, how that's going to look, how things are going, and what we're doing, what everyone's doing right now to check in with their charters on renewal tracking.
Thanks, Kathy. All right, I added him to the website.
Oh,
Awesome.
thank you.
Okay. Central. Jeff, anything major in yours?
We had a really good conversation, and we dropped our notes over on slide 4. Yeah, and for one, we were very appreciative of the updates that came today as a reflection of the feedback from the previous month. That was really helpful. Yeah, there were a good variety of issues. The potential for flood of renewals coming, charters declining enrollment, material revisions as it relates to independent study, and maybe even other things depending on how broad we want to go. There was a great question about community impact analysis for appeals. Well, appeals would be the COE level or maybe even the state board level, but the idea of community impact analyses. And then AB 181, there were a few questions in discussion. And then we ended talking about LCAP and the opportunity that the LCAP provides, as well as, what is the LCAP and charters completing it properly and thoroughly mean from an authorizing perspective. And so we had a little bit of conversation about that, but would definitely love to hear more going forward.
Awesome. Okay, and then the non-authorizer partner group. Allison, was there anything major in that group?
I was in on that one.
Oh.
And in our group, it was sort of repeating some of the same thing, questions about renewals, questions about, again, the question that came up in the earlier session about what discretion does an authorizer have to say? Well, we're going to actually put it off even more. Is there statutory grounds for that? Or could they do it if the charter consented? Or does that have a statutory thing? So there's some legal questions there about what those things might be. And then the question came up also, that was an interesting one, just about sort of the ins and outs of the universal pre-K and, what the calculations would be for a charter school. On the surface, why would a charter school not do it? It's more enrollment, but there's also some big operational considerations for a school to think about. So that was kind of just an interesting conversation.
Great. All right, next slide, please. Tom.
Coming events. Well, you may have seen the email from Cassie and the one from CCAP about the trainings that we have, the next regional trainings or quarterly trainings. Regional, we use that word, although one of them we always are now offering a virtual one. So here again is the lineup. And I want to mention just a couple of things. This, by the way, is financial oversight. And it's the big picture, signs of fiscal distress, warning signs, stuff from FCMAT, and Michelle Giacomini, who some of you saw at the conference, will be there. And her colleague, Jennifer Noga, also from FCMAT, and Debbie Deal, who you know well from CCAP, will do that. One of the things, in addition to that big picture and signs of fiscal distress and those sorts of things, some of the feedback we got at the CCAP conference was we'd really love to sit down with actual financial documents and look at them together. So that will be built into this as well. The virtual one is October 14th. And the other ones, if there's enough people signed up, we'll offer up to 3, again, North, Central, South. Right now, I'll just say it's pretty early. Right now, the numbers are pretty low on the 3 regional ones, especially the central one. So if any of you or your colleagues or people who aren't on this call, but you might want to spread the word, and you'd like to do it in person, the upside to the in-person ones will be there's enough time where we're inviting authorizers to actually bring your own financial documents from some of your schools if you want to bounce them around with the presenters or ask particular questions about them. Probably not enough time for that in the virtual one, but we'll provide a set that we can have in common at the virtual one. So there's a lot of interest in the virtual one. We understand people are busy, and so we'll definitely make the most of that one too. But if there are any of these regional ones that are optional for you, we encourage you to fill out that survey so we can plan and let the presenters know, okay, we're going to do 2 out of the 3, or all 3 of them are on.
And we've just put the survey into the chat for this meeting. Please give us feedback. We do take your comments very seriously. We've adjusted some of our slides and some of our questions based off of that survey information. So please respond to our meeting survey. And we are now at 10:57. I'm actually going to give you 2 minutes of your time back. Thank you so much for being here, and have a wonderful, great day.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks for your survey responses.